Welcome to the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday, a great start to your weekend. This weather has been bizarre. Feels like we moved to Seattle at some point like 3 weeks ago, but the rain, I think, is due to stop at some point. Enjoy the summer. It's in that weird vortex we're in where Avs are gone, Nuggets are gone, Rockies are historically inept, and the Broncos, though they're in OTAs and providing a little excitement. I had a chance yesterday to catch up with Mike McGlinchey, the 8-year stalwart right tackle, third year he's entering in Denver. He had some fascinating things to say about both Nix and Coach Sean Payton. I think you're going to want to hear that. But this Broncos team, there's just a different vibe out there, folks. Again, I'm not getting ahead of myself. It's not a stampede yet, but as I wrote in my column today, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. This is a team that's definitely pointing in the right direction. So I want to get into some of the players being out there yesterday that are continuing to kind of catch my eye during these workouts. So specifically offensively, guys that are starting to make a statement, if you will, and it's OTAs. Always demands perspective, but some guys who are definitely helping themselves in these off-season workouts. But I want to get to Mike McGlinchey's interview, let you hear what he has to say about his quarterback, Bo Nix, and his coach, Sean Payton. That's all coming up after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggatt Injury Law a call. There's Darby right there. Again, their motto is with us, it's personal. That because it is with Darby. I've known Darby for more than a decade. We traveled around the country watching our boys play baseball. I coached his son in hoops. We talk sports all the time. He said, Troy, you got to do a Broncos podcast. I'm so happy he told me to do that. We became good friends. Many of Darby's clients become his good friends. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work, give Darby's team a call. That's 1-833-HOGGAT, and you see it on the screen there as well. That's 1-833-464-4288, or go to the website at hoggattlaw.com. Welcome back to the Broncos Pod. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. Hope you're, again, having a great start to your weekend. Thank you from wherever you're joining me. I can't tell you how much Broncos country your support of this pod means to me. I don't know how many years we're in now. It feels like 4. But without Nate Lundy and Danny Bailey behind the screen, I would not be able to do this. We've transitioned to YouTube, and you guys have followed me over there. I know some still listen on the audio side, whether it's Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your pods. So thank you for your support. I want to make sure and get that up front, because especially this time of year when there's not a lot going on, it's a testament to you, Broncos country, how much you follow and your passion for this team, which is why I think you're going to enjoy this interview. I got Thursday a one-on-one interview with stalwart right tackle Mike McGlinchey. Big dude. He's 6'8", 315. I am not 315. There's times I feel like I am, but I'm 5'6". So to say I'm looking up when I interview Mike is an understatement. But he's one of my favorite guys to interview, and he's become one of my favorite guys to interview over the last, 10, 11 years of covering the Broncos. He went to Notre Dame. He graduated from there with a degree in film and kind of a media communication thing. I mean, this is a guy who's well-spoken, very intelligent, and kind of has the ability to go macro, micro on things. And he gets it. As reporters, when we talk to certain players, they kind of get it, like how this whole thing works. And McGlinchey, having played at Notre Dame on great teams, on lines with Quentin Nelson, the Martin brothers. I mean, he has seen excellence, played alongside it. Then he was on some great Niners teams. They fell short of the Super Bowl, but he was part of some really, really good Niners teams. And now he's here with several of his Niners teammates. But when Mike McGlinchey came here 3 years ago, of course it's the money. We'd never say it's not in free agency. It's like $87.5 million. He was one of the first guys to join in. It was like Stidham, McGlinchey, Powers, boom, boom, boom. Right after Sean Payton opens his first free agency with the Broncos, he made it a priority that they're going to fix the offensive line, and McGlinchey was part of that. And he's been good. The first year he was inconsistent. Last year had a knee injury, but Mike felt like he played his best football after he came back from that knee injury, and I would agree. I think, and the film bears that out. But he made a decision to come here, and the money's always part of it. When this team was not very good, you guys all know it. the playoff drought, the drought of losing seasons that felt like it was going to go on for decades at some point. So that decision he made was really a factor with Sean Payton, and having the faith that they were ultimately going to figure out the quarterback position. Of course, Russell Wilson was there, but no one saw him at that point as the long-term option based on his first season in Denver. So Mike McGlinchey, again, I had a longer interview, but I wanted you guys to hear these two answers regarding, first, Bo Nix, and then secondly, Sean Payton. But when you look at Bo Nix, this is why it was fascinating to talk to McGlinchey. Watching with my eyes, the eyeball test, Bo Nix is really comfortable in his own skin out there. He's confident, the way he's operating in the huddle, the way he's getting the team out of the huddle, all that operational stuff. And you just see a guy who's growing up before our eyes. Last year, he had, he got it, if you will, like what it means to be the Broncos quarterback. But there were times he couldn't execute it on the field, especially early in the season, and he got much better, certainly the last 12 weeks. But now you see it in everything else, the way he carries himself, who he is. I mean, this is a guy that is really taking hold of this role. And so I asked Mike McGlinchey about that, what it meant for this team to make the playoffs, what they learned from that, and then what he's seen in Bo Nix. And listen to that answer. And you can read more about it in the denverpost.com with my column today. Listen to that answer and how much Sean Payton played a factor in his decision to come here. So let's hear from Mike McGlinchey, a one-on-one, about Nix, Payton, and what it meant for the Broncos to make the playoffs.
Definitely didn't get in the way we wanted to last year. We could have won it 2 weeks earlier. And then you get to Buffalo, and you realize there's still a lot of work to be done.
Okay.
And I think nobody's saying that we've made it. I don't think anybody feels that way. I know Sean doesn't feel that way.
Right.
But I know the expectation is to now compete and take that next step to be a contender in the AFC. And I think we're right on the right track. I think guys are believing. I think guys, you get that playoff experience, and then you realize, okay, when you need to win in the playoffs, you need your best stuff, and you need it all year round. And,
right.
and I think the overall consistency in which we play at, I think just continuing to develop the players that have been here and the young guys that are coming in, and being able to execute in the biggest moments. And I think if we can do that week in and week out, we'll have a really good shot.
Big part of that is Bo, and after that first month, he is clearly a top 10 quarterback statistically, even the eye test.
Yeah.
What now would you look for him in year two? Just me watching, eyeballing it, he looks really comfortable in his own skin.
I think the confidence that he's exhibiting on a day-to-day basis, the competitiveness, the way he's willing to get after Sean, even at times.
Even still? Yeah. Beyond the one day? Yeah, one day we all saw?
Because now it's, this is his team. And and I think he knows that. I think everybody else knows that. And it's really cool to see a young kid, like we talked about in the last question, it was manage expectation. Well, he doesn't give a shit. He wants to do is just go compete and be the best that he can be. And he is such a talent of blocking out anything else that doesn't matter to him. And I think that's what separates the great ones, is simplifying your life to make sure that everything is going towards the goal that you want. And I mean, the way he's looked in the last 2 weeks, it's like this kid is on his way to taking off. And
you notice a difference from this time a year ago?
You notice it in his demeanor. You notice it in the confidence in his play calling. You notice it in the confidence and when he rips it, and the disappointment when it doesn't work.
Okay.
And the expectation for him is that every play needs to work. And his competitiveness and his toughness, on top of his, the confidence in which he plays with. Like, he doesn't care about getting criticized. He doesn't care about bad plays. He knows those are a part of it. And it's really cool to watch.
When you say it's his team, a lot of kids get given that.
Yeah.
But does it resonate more that he earned this? When I talked to Samaje Perine at the Super Bowl, he told me, he's like, other than Joe Burrow, he said that he reminded him of Joe Burrow, that even last April, he's like, I couldn't believe how well he knew the playbook.
We all said the same thing, but
he's earned it, right?
He absolutely. Bo has earned everything he's gotten here from day one.
Okay.
Obviously, picked to be our franchise quarterback. That was no secret when he got here, but
right.
with that comes a lot of great, BS, and he doesn't let himself deal with that. He just works constantly. He's the first one to greet you when you walk in the building. He's constantly doing everything to improve his game, and when I say it's his team, it's because he's made sure it's his team, because it's
lives here in the off season.
Everything about him is to be great here, and we've all felt that since the first day he walked in, and even more so in year 2, because he knows what he does. He last year he was like, okay, I don't know what I don't know. This year he knows exactly what he needs to do, and he's executing that.
When I look back at your first guys to join on when Sean got here, and it was ugly. The history was ugly. The recent history. How meaningful it is to be part of it as you're turning it around, and then to get it to that next place where this franchise has been before.
Well, it's super fun. That's the best part, is once you make a decision to trust a head coach like Sean, and with the rest of hopefully the rest of my career.
Right.
And we were coming to a pretty dark time, and things that weren't exactly favorable in this town for a long time, and to go from where we were 2 years ago to where we are now, the pride that we all take in building that and making sure that our program never steps back to that ever again. It's so much fun, and it's very prideful to know that, I came here, it wasn't great. You saw growth the first year, saw a lot of growth the second year, and now we're ready to be on the big stage of the NFL. And that's all you can ask for, is the opportunity to be able to be on a team that has the belief before it all even starts that we can do it, and that's half the battle. Right,
and it was. I mean, money's part of free agency, but how much was it faith in Sean, or was it blind faith, or was it faith in Sean that you really believed? Like, well, I think this could turn around.
Yeah, I had a couple of conversations with Sean throughout the process, and just talking to him, you're like, man, there's
a vision.
Yeah, well, there's a vision, but the belief, the conviction in what he knows and what he does and how he builds things. I think he was the deciding factor, right? Like, I played for Kyle, who I believe is one of the best head coaches in football, and I know how hard it is when that guy's not right. I've heard all of my buddies that had come in from free agency, guys here when I first got here, the stories
what it was like before.
Yeah, the stories that you hear, you're like, as an NFL football player, your life can be really miserable if you got an idiot for a head coach. And I was making sure that I wasn't going to turn my career over from what I was there and what we had there to I'm just going to check the box and go to work, right? I want to compete. I want to be able to be at the top levels. And Sean was the biggest factor for that. Like, I just knew by talking to him throughout the process that no matter what it looks like now, it's not going to look like that in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about you personally? Last year you dealt with the knee issue. You missed a little bit. What do you look to accomplish as you get? I mean, could you grow, but can you get better when you get to this stage in your career? Because what is you're 6, 7, 8?
Yeah. So I firmly believe that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
Yep.
And I think there's so much more for me to accomplish in this league. I think the way that we approach it with Streif every day, and he feels that for me. Like I feel as though I personally, even as our team grew, I feel like I grew. I think I had. Personally, I probably had one of my best seasons I've ever had a year ago, and all I can do is hope to continue to build on that. I used to say as a young player, I worried about the accolades, like you want to be a Pro Bowl or All-Pro. Everybody wants to do that. At the end of the day, that's not in my control. Would that be incredibly nice and an accomplishment? Absolutely. But all I want to do is to be the best I can be.
Well, welcome back to the pod, and thanks again for Mike McGlinchey for making time with me Thursday after OTA practice. Again, his praise of Bo Nix. Last year when I talked to Mike about Bo, he said, he blends confidence with humility. And he's, it's kind of like there's clarity and brevity. He's not pretending to be a rah-rah guy. He's not doing the eyewash leadership stuff. He's leading through example by putting in the work. And that's something that continues to come up with him. And Samaje Perine, again, you heard that in the clip, told me at the Super Bowl, and other than Joe Burrow, he's never been out a young quarterback that knew a playbook so well in April, a few weeks after he was drafted, than Bo Nix. And McGlinchey told me last year that how Bo earned the respect of the locker room by just the way he was going about his job. And that's important. I know everyone's like, he's always going to be the starter. Yes, he was. But how you go about that matters. You see what's happened with Anthony Richardson with the Colts, and unfortunately he's hurt again. But when you're given the job and your teammates don't feel like you earned it, it creates friction. Because they're out there, most of them are mercenaries, kind of living that paycheck to paycheck, week to week life of the NFL. And then when they see a guy elevated to the top of the depth chart without performing well in practice, because players know, I mean, they say the eye in the sky doesn't lie. Players at practice know who's playing well. Trust me. And so when you're not playing well and you keep moving up the depth chart, it creates credibility issues for the coach. It creates fractures in the locker room. So when Bo did it by just going out there and working and performing, that was a huge part of it. But now we're seeing the evolution of Bo Nix, as McGlinchey talked about. And Broncos country, you should be excited for what year 2 looks like. Based on what McGlinchey said, what other players have told me, it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. He's going to have bad games. They all do. But what I found interesting is how he said he doesn't give a crap. I'm not going to cuss because Bo doesn't, and that's it. Doesn't give a crap about the criticism. He's kind of like that shark, no wasted movement. He's not going to concern himself what others say about him. That is a great place to be. My guess is he learned that at Auburn without talking to Bo, because it was really difficult for him that last year in Auburn, changing coaches, changing coordinators, and you're trying to play at a place where your dad was the quarterback and you've been billed as the savior. That could not have been easy for him. And he was still dealing with some of that shrapnel when he got to Oregon, where his confidence was shaken. Now you see a player that's kind of morphed into this individual, like this body armor around him, that this is what I need to do. Everything I'm going to do is built on being the best quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And that last part matters. Because when you talk to Broncos quarterbacks, sometimes the off the field's harder than being on it. Sometimes being the Broncos quarterback is harder than playing as the Broncos quarterback. And because of the magnitude of the role, it is the most high-profile position in the state. With all due respect to Nikola Jokic and Nathan McKinnon, nobody pays more attention to the Broncos than this state, this region. And when you're the quarterback, you are the focal point. You and the head coach are the focal point. And it doesn't mean you're the only reason they win, but you are the focal point for praise and criticism. And so for Bo to have the self-awareness and understanding that he's not going to get caught up in the drama and the headlines and, the eyewash and the appearance stuff, that he's just going to put his head down and work and do what's best for his team, his teammates, that's a great place to be for a second-year quarterback. Doesn't guarantee continued linear success. You can't guarantee that in the NFL. But with better weapons, better run game, I think you all can see why I believe Nix is going to be even better. Or he could just play at the level he played at the last 12 weeks, and you would take that. Trust me. You're going to take a 3-to-1 touchdown to pick ratio and a guy who can run for 500 to 650 yards and account for somewhere between 35 and 40 touchdowns. You can win with that. You can win with that. And the other thing that we didn't get into in that interview, but I talked with McGlinchey about, was the ability to get better in the run game. And Sean Payton, I asked him about it on Thursday, and he agreed that they left some meat on the bone. With Javonte Williams lacking explosiveness and kind of that ability to break tackles that defined his rookie season, they weren't great in the run game. He finished with 513 yards. That was the lowest ever leading rushing total for a Sean Payton club in his 17 years in coaching. And part it's the merry-go-round. I think Sean is responsible and deserves some blame for that, not settling on one guy and not giving more run to when a guy gets hot. But the reality is they weren't a great running team. And again, the juxtaposition is that ESPN and other places that do metrics on this rated the Broncos as one of the best win block rates in the run game. So if you believe that, and Payton acknowledged that yesterday, that he felt like they did block well in the run game. So if you believe that, that means with the right running back, you should have a much improved running game. And whether that's RJ Harvey, whether that's J.K. Dobbins, that should have been a headline. I apologize, but sometimes I get tired and forget. And we'll hit on that a little more here later. But whether that's Harvey, whether that's Dobbins, and he left without signing, so it's not him yet. I think they really want to address third down. I think that's part of the reason Dobbins was doing the visit, and it's always about money as a free agent. But can you trust Harvey? Can you trust Estime? Can you trust McLaughlin to pick up a blitz on third down that doesn't get Bo Nix absolutely slaughtered? That's my guess is why they're saying, yeah, we like this group, but we'd prefer to have a little more experience on third down. And this is the thing, like Pirine would fit better for this team than last year. Now that they're kind of a winning team, there's a more clear role for him. Like Pirine would have a clear role as that third down back. And Javonte Williams, that was a strength of his. It's just he just not running the ball effectively enough to carry him just as a third down back, and he didn't have explosiveness in the pass game. Because that's one thing, they've got to add explosiveness in the pass game. To do that, you got to be able to have people, running backs that can pick up blitzes. But getting back to it, McGlinchey was telling me that they are sprinkling in some outside zone run scheme principles. So we'll keep an eye on that. You know, that outside zone can, as you kind of all move together, and it's the Terrell Davis, put your foot in the ground and get downhill. Maybe that can lead to some more explosive runs, because they only had a couple over 20 yards last year, and one of them was Bo Nix. They just were not an explosive run team at all. And it was a bigger issue with the offense, where few teams in the league, the Broncos averaged 25 points a game. They ranked 10th. So they were a good offense, but their strength was going 80 yards, 70 yards. I mean, at some point you want a turnover and then have a 3-play 50-yard drive, a 3-play 60-yard drive. Can they add that element, with part of that being the run game? Burst off a 35-yarder and then 25-yard pass, boom, we're in the end zone. It's a 14-point turnaround, touchdown, turnover, touchdown. That's how you put your foot on a throat in a home game especially, but it's how you take over a road game, is those conversion turnovers, points off turnovers. So it's something to keep an eye on. But again, McGlinchey talked about how they are sprinkling in some of that outside zone run scheme. Can that help? Can that really help give this team some explosiveness, that cutback lane, that ability to, beat one guy on the backside as you get downhill? I'm curious, because they have to be better. As McGlinchey said it, it's not about being better. We have to be better. He knows it. They all know it. And the offensive line, in so many ways, as Payton said, permeates the building. They set the tone of physicality, of dominance, of inserting your will and imposing your will. Because, as it's been explained to me by a number of coaches, and Payton talked about it, if your offensive line is bad, you can't properly evaluate your quarterback. You can't properly evaluate your running backs. You can't properly evaluate receivers because your quarterback doesn't have time. And you're constantly trailing, and you become one-dimensional. So that's why you have to be good up front. If you can't run, you can't stop the run, you can't protect the quarterback, you can't get to the quarterback. These are all hallmarks of bad teams. Broncos have fixed that over the last few years. And when you look at this defense and how it stacks up, they have a chance. If you're able to now get ahead 17-3, and now let's slow the game down. Let's put it in molasses, put it in peanut butter, and, have one of those long drives where you have 12-play drive, 9 rushes. With this defense, you get behind, and then the Broncos are able to control the clock, control the sticks, in part with the run game. That's how you win in December, January, and then ultimately February, is that ability to control the game. And it's complementary. Your defense creates turnovers, your defense gets you the ball back, and you're able to then siphon the clock out. And then again, that extra element would be the big strike, that random big strike play that really puts a team on its heels. So, and you can see some of the makings of that. But again, McGlinchey is really bullish on Nix. Of course he has to be, but it's different than that, folks, is what I'm trying to explain. I talk to these guys both publicly and privately, and I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass and say, oh, all these guys love Bo Nix. They believe in him. They believe in him in a way and they believe in him because of the way he's earned their respect, the way he goes about his business, and the way he performed. That's all players care about in the NFL. It's not where you're drafted, your money, your cars, your commercials. Can you help us win games on Sunday? And with the league now, pretty much every day of the week, but maybe Tuesday. Can you do that? Bo did that. But it's what they see behind the scenes. It's competitiveness, how much he hates to lose. Again, the work ethic, first guy in the building to greet you, just his attitude and his linear focus on getting better. That's why they believe in him. Again, so, McGlinchey is part of that. The Bulls have said the same thing. All these linemen, the fact that they believe is part of it. And can they do their jobs without believing? Of course they can. But something is now forming. It's coalescing that the Broncos have something here. Now can they get to that next step? And McGlinchey said this to me. It's like now it's about overall consistency throughout the season and playing their best in the biggest moments. That's how you go from 10-7 to 11-6, 12-5, hosting a playoff game, winning a playoff game, winning the AFC West. Finally somebody dethroning the Chiefs' 9-year run of AFC West titles. All that is what's next. And that's not easy. For Broncos, it was felt impossible at times to get relevant again, but now becomes sometimes the harder part, staying relevant and taking that next step with expectations. Last year, they had the advantage of nobody believing in them. Myself included, I thought they were a 5-6 win team. I think I picked them to win 6 games. That's, I'm not saying an easier place to be, but it just puts the entire bag of Doritos on your shoulder. Forget a chip. And it's the, Broncos versus everybody mentality. Now you have expectations. How do you handle success? At different times under Sean Payton here, they haven't handled it well. Even last year, as McGlinchey said, they had a couple opportunities to get to the playoffs, and they lost at not San Diego. They lost at the Chargers in LA. They lost to the Bengals. Very good games, but they still lost them. And so that's the next step, winning close games and winning games against good teams. That's when we'll know that this team is not just for real, but a team that's a legitimate threat in the AFC. Last year, they absolutely just devoured the NFC South. That's their schedule. But now, as they take that next step, can they consistently win one-score games, home or away? And can they beat good teams? Or, 500 against teams with winning records. You crush the bad teams on your schedule, the Giants, the Jets, those kind of teams. I mean, you need to sweep the Raiders again if possible. They're going to be way better. But you get those out of the way. Now, what does it look like against Kansas City? What does it look like against the Chargers? What does it look like at Washington? I mean, that's going to be the tell. But they're in a good position, folks, with the emergence and evolution of Bo Nix, and you heard it there from Mike McGlinchey. It puts them in a good position. So who are some of the other players as we transition unsmoothly to another topic? Who are some of the other players who are kind of popping, if you will, at OTAs offensively? Well, first I'll say defensively. Talanoa Hufanga has really made his mark defensively. Again, they're not in pads, but you can see his aggressiveness and his instincts. He's known as a hitter. The guy's going to light you up like the Vegas Strip, but he has real instincts for the ball. I mean, I'd love to see what it looks like with him if he can stay healthy, because he's a playmaker. And a lot of guys say they are, and they're not. He's around the ball, and he's the guy who can dislodge the ball, but he's one who understands kind of positioning and where the ball's going to be when the ball's tipped. Can he be that guy? Because, man, if he can, holy smokes. He and Greenlaw, if they're healthy and they play 13, 14 games apiece, I think this defense has a chance to be not top 5, but 1 or 2, really, based on the talent that's returning and the talent they added. But he's looked really good. Again, context matters. They're not in pads, but he's looked good playing downhill. PJ Locke's not even out there. He's dealing with some type of injury. He's on a side field. He's moving well, but Talanoa Hufanga has definitely caught my eye, and most people out there would say that. Offensively, it's almost impossible to evaluate the running backs until the pads go on. So I'm not going to tell you. I mean, Harvey looks the part in terms of the physicality. He's a little undersized at 5'9". Again, that's why I think that the J.K. Dobbins thing, as we revisit it, I think the reason they want him, they want a veteran in the room. And the two guys that are out there are J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb. Could they sign one of those? Certainly could. Both are coming off knee issues. Dobbins is like I want to say he's 3 years removed from crazy knee surgery, where he finally looked like himself last year for large chunks. And then obviously Chubb would be his second season removed from that gruesome knee injury he suffered on that Monday night game or Sunday night game in Cleveland. But they would like experience in the room, because you're really young with a rookie second year back and another third year back in McLaughlin. That's young. And there's not one of those guys who's clearly a third down guy who can pick up a blitz. So Dobbins would fit. Why isn't he here? Well, my guess is money. I think he was tendered at like 1.5, 1.6 million by the Chargers. Obviously, he wants more than that. I'm sure the Broncos want him as cheap as possible, especially this time of year where the player doesn't have a lot of leverage, not a lot of openings. So he left without a deal. I know he had dinner. He was at the facility. I don't know how the workout went or any of that, if they put him through the kind of the spin, if you will, but they definitely had a good meeting with him, and we'll see. It doesn't mean it's off, but he left without a deal. So that means maybe Nick Chubb comes into play. Keep an eye on that. Those are the two veterans who could come in and, if nothing else, could play a role on third down, that have done it, been there, done that, and that role would be a little more defined than they're used to. The one concern about Dobbins is after a really quick start, first few weeks of the season, he pretty much averaged about 3.8 yards a carry over the second half of the year, and that's something that can't be discounted. And he is a guy that gets hurt. I mean, he missed 4 games last year. He gets hurt. So was that decline because he's hurt, or was it just kind of that's who he is? They have to understand that before you bring him in. But I do think that wouldn't be a deal breaker, because of the fact I would see him more as a third down back. That's me personally. Chubb, another guy who got stronger as the year went on. Can he regain part of his form and be that third down back? So keep an eye on those two. But let's now get to what I was trying to transition to. Who are a couple of the breakout players beyond Talanoa Hufanga? Not a breakout, but the guy who's caught an eye. I'm telling you, folks, keep an eye on Devon Vele. This is a guy that they had big plans for. Then he hurt his ribs and he missed some time, but he put up pretty decent stats last year. You kind of forget it because Cortland had his best year in like 5 years. But Vele played 13 games, 41 catches, 475 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he only had 55 targets. So if you get him with consistent playing time, he was inactive, I think, a couple times, if I remember, not just hurt. He missed a couple games with injury. But is he a guy that could get 75 catches for 700, 800 yards? Let's say 75 catches for 850 yards and 6, 7 touchdowns? The way he runs the slant, his great hands, he reminds me a lot of Tim Patrick in that way. Very sound fundamentally. He runs routes well. He's a student of the game, takes it seriously. And so I've seen him, and you see the slants, and you see a guy who can catch contested balls. That's how Sutton grew and earned Bo Nix's trust. Is he was basically their only third down weapon, it felt like, for weeks. But keep an eye on Vele. And the sneaky thing about this is they keep saying that they're going to take care of Cortland Sutton, and he's earned the right to be taken care of. But if he wants huge money, he's not getting Justin Jefferson money, but if he wants T. Higgins money, even on a shorter deal, we got to keep an eye on it. That is there a breaking point in those negotiations? I've said that, I was against giving him a contract before last year, thought he earned it based on what he did with Bo Nix, but there is a breaking point. There is a kind of line in the sand in every negotiation. And the feeling and the vibes have been much better this offseason than a year ago. But it's something we have to monitor. And that's why I bring up Vele. He was brought in some ways as Tim Patrick's replacement, but eventually could he be Cortland Sutton's replacement in that way? If they feel really bullish on him and Mims and Franklin, again, just file it away that Vele has looked really good. He arrived in camp with these camp with intention as a guy to improve, and really is someone to kind of put his name out there that, hey, I'm ready to take that next step. He's an older player, remember. He was, took a mission before college, so he's a much older player. He goes into this year, his second year, at age 27. He turns 28 in December, so it's a little bit different than your normal second-year rookie. Another one who's really jumped is Marvin Mims. He is impressive. He finished last year, that last month of the season, as an absolute dynamo, someone who made a huge difference in their offense, no more than at that Bengals game when he played one of the better games by a receiver, by a Bronco in years, just in terms of the bright lights, big game. Finished with 39 receptions, 503 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He feels like a guy who could break out, and let's say that number now gets to 55 catches and 650 yards, and you take the 6 touchdowns. He's already an all-pro returner, punt returner. He's great as a kick returner. But you look at his game log, what he did over that last month of the season, he was a difference maker. And we all wonder, like, why does this guy not play more? But he finally did. So we look at just the last month of the season, the last 4 regular season games, what that looked like for him. And Mims, his last 4 games, 20 catches, 236 yards, 4 touchdowns. If he's that guy, something close to that guy, wow. You throw that in there with Evan Ingram, with Mims, with Vele, with Sutton, with Franklin, and now it feels like you got something, especially if you're able to run the ball. But again, he's popped. I think he's probably benefited from Johnny Morton not being there. He would never say that. Mims is not that guy. Morton wore out Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims last year. And I know some guys respond to that. I just didn't get the sense, at least in camp, that it was helpful, maybe a little more for Franklin, but it just felt like it was frustrating Mims. And for me, it was kind of keeping him off the field, honestly. And by the end of the year, you just put your head down and he's viewed differently. They started using him as a gimmick guy in the backfield, and next thing you know, he explodes. People forget Marvin Mims might be the greatest high school receiver of all time. Like, this isn't a guy who's new to catching the football. He put up insane numbers in high school, insane numbers at Oklahoma, so he's used to a big role in the receiving game. He's never been the gimmick guy, but the gimmick of putting him in the backfield got him on the field. So again, those last 4 games, he's averaging 5 catches a game, and he's averaging right around 75 yards receiving and a touchdown a game. Hell yeah, you'd take that. But he looks good, folks. I think you can look at Mims and Vele as someone who arrived with intention to make a difference. So those are some of the guys. There's other players, but I just wanted to highlight a few. Talanoa Hufanga defensively, Devon Vele and Marvin Mims offensively, which is a good sign for a team that wants to take that next step offensively. And again, listen to that interview with McGlinchey. That should leave you encouraged, Broncos country, of the direction this team is heading as they try to go from a team that made the playoffs to a team that can make a long run in the playoffs. I could not do this podcast, folks, without the support of Hoggatt Injury Law, my A1 from day one, Darby Hoggatt, and Danny Bailey behind the screen. Of course, Nate Lundy and Mile High Sports providing this platform. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness, that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.